Okay, now it's 6 p.m. PDT. And yeah, so my name is Haiyan, and I'm basically a rising senior at Karma High School. And I'm looking forward to being your lead instructor this class. So there are two main things that I like to first mention before we proceed with the lecture. The first being that you may have noticed that we have decided to move to this stage channel, and this will basically allow us to turn on our videos during lectures since Discord's kind of a bum and they put a limit on like video feature with over 25 members. So yeah, this might be a permanent change. So yeah, be on the lookout for future classes using this. And the second is that we will start to the second is that we have decided to divide the class chat into 3 different groups so that we can sort of alleviate our burden of having to deal with just one singular chat during class, and so that we can like have a lesser pool of students to work with when we're doing the progress check. So that yeah, that's basically another major update. So yeah, whenever you have any questions during the class, you will see that there's a channel called Team Class, and there's a certain color, and just head on over to that chat to ask any questions you want. And yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, so CS1 day 3. And before we begin, let's just go over the homework from last class. I hope everyone did them and hopefully you got them all correct. But if not, then let me just guide you through the process. So let's go over the first problem. So finding the second item, let's see. So basically we want to have a program that outputs 2 different values essentially. So if the items in the list are, if the length of the items in the list are less than 2, then we're going to say it's too short. But if not, if it's greater than 2, then we're just going to output the second element in the list. So yeah, let's just get solving. So let's see, the first problem. Okay. So yeah, so basically this is basically the answer. You want to create a function called, and we can call it anything we want to. So second item, we're gonna take in a list. Yeah, let me just make this bigger.
You're not screen sharing.
Be good. And yeah, and we're gonna say if the length of the list is less than 2, then we want to print that it's too short, right? Otherwise, we're just gonna wait. My bad. We should return the string, and otherwise we want to return the second element.
You're not sharing your screen. Sorry to interrupt that.
And yeah, and then we're just gonna have a variable called list. We're gonna take the input. And then we're just gonna split them so that any space so that the string can be split into its proper list. So we're just gonna split it based on any spaces between, and then we're just gonna print out by calling the function. And yeah, that should be good to go. Let's see. Yeah, that should be good to go. Let's just see. So running on test 1, and you can see that it got accepted. Okay, and let's go to the second problem. Perfect list. So let's see. A perfect list is a list in which the first element is 1 and last item is the same as the length of the list. So basically we can see that in this example, 4 is the last element in the list, but there are also 4 elements in the list. And we can also see that the first element is 1. Therefore, it is a perfect list. And we just want to basically return perfect if it is perfect, and otherwise just a frowny face if it is not. So yeah, let's just get cracking.
Haiyan.
So submit code for a perfect list.
Haiyan.
And yeah.
You're not
So
sharing your
basically,
screen.
let's just take in the input.
Attention.
Alright, hi everyone. I'm sorry. It looks like we're having some technical difficulty. Let's move on to we're going to go back to the VC instead of the stage. It looks like the stage is having some issues. I apologize for that. If everyone could just join the VC instead of the stage. It looks like the stage is having some problems.
Hello?
Hello, Haiyan.
Hello? Okay.
Yeah, we couldn't see your screen share at the
Oh,
beginning.
whoops.
Yeah,
My bad. Yeah.
that's unfortunate. Yeah, so we're
Oh,
gonna move to the.
wait, so from the beginning?
Yeah, I think it was because there's too many people in the stage, and only like a certain number
Oh,
of
okay,
people
I
can
see.
like.
Okay, yeah, I can
See
go
it.
over
We're all going to move to the VC instead of stage.
Yep.
Oh, the BC? Okay.
Also, the VC's private.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You just finished that.
I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that should work.
Okay, can you guys see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Whoops, my bad. Okay. So I'll just I'll just do the problems again. Let's see. Give me a sec. Okay, sweet. Okay, I'll just repeat from the start again. So basically, for the first problem from last class, we basically wanted to write a program that checks to see if the list is less than 2. I mean, if the length of the list is less than 2, then we should basically output that it is too short. And if not, then we will basically return the second item in the list. So I'll go over the walkthrough. So basically, we want to create a function called second item and take in any list. Next, we want to see if the length of the list is less than 2, then we should probably return it's too short. Otherwise, we can just return the second element in the list. Okay, now let's take our input. And then let's call the function. Item list, okay. And yeah, that should be basically it. And let's see and submit it. And we can see that it got accepted. Okay, moving on to the second problem, the perfect list. So a perfect list is defined as if the first element in the list starts with 1 and the last element is the length of the list. So meaning that, for example, in this problem, we can see that it starts with 1 and then the last element is 4. But there are also 4 elements within this list. Therefore, it is a perfect list. So we want to return perfect if it is perfect. Otherwise, we want to return a frowny face. So let's just go over that. Perfect list. And then let's get our input. And check and see if the first element in the list is 1 and if the last element is equal to the length of the list. So Okay. So if this is true, then we want to print perfect. Otherwise, we want to print a frowny face. Okay, and this should be it. Let me just double check. String. Okay, yeah. And let's submit it. And yeah, it got accepted. So that was basically the problems from last class. And yeah, let's go over our content for today. So, okay, wait. Okay, there we go. So yeah, so today we're going to learn about loops essentially. Now loops gives us the functionality to repeat code more than one time. Because let's just say you want to print numbers from 1 to 100, right? You would then have to modify each expression within the print statement 100 times. And that can be really tedious. So that's what loops essentially allows us to do. They allow us to basically repeat code, 2 times, 5 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. And that is basically the power of loops. So there are basically 2 types of loops. One is called the for loop, which is what this slide is about, and another is called while loop. Now the for loop allows us to repeat code if we know how many times we want to repeat it. So for example, let's just say we want to print something 10 times. This is what for loops will be used for. And while loops basically allow us to repeat a code until a certain condition is met. And yeah, I'll go over what while loops are later on, but let's just go into for loops. So yeah, think about cutting 10 apples. Would you prefer to write a code that basically cuts apples 10 times, or with one code that basically allows you to do that multiple times? So a for loop basically allows you to repeat a function a specific number of times, and that is really key to note. So here's the example code. So we can see here that we have a function called sum from to n. We have 2 parameters called m and n, and basically we're gonna take the sum from m to n. However, so you can see that in line 3 of this example, we basically iterate through the numbers from m to n, and it's inclusive, meaning that both are involved or included in this iteration process. So this code basically sums up 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10. And yeah, so I want everyone to open up Replit, and let's just shoot. Our screen keeps disconnecting every time like not present and present. So yeah, everyone please type this in your Replit and basically run it, and let's just see what the sum is actually. So is it 45, 35, or 40? And I'll include this in the class chat, in the main class chat, so that you can just easily copy it. Whoops. Give me a second. Okay, there we go. This should work. Again, everyone please open up your Replit and basically just copy the code in. Actually, no. Don't do that yet. It's indented wrong. Sorry for that. Okay, now it should be good to go. Yeah. Okay. And I'll also share my screen. Yeah. So basically, give me a second. Yeah, so let's just see and run the code. Oh shoot. Inconsistent, total. Inconsistent.
Sum from ton has 2 ends.
What?
like the print sum from ton, right?
Yeah.
There's two n's there, which is different from like the defined.
Um. Wait, which line?
I'm 7.
In 7.
Line 7. Print sum from 2 and 5 to 10.
It should be sum from capital T O capital N. There's a lowercase n, just delete that one.
Oh, wait. Yeah, I see. Okay. There we go.
There.
Or not.
Indent total. Line 4. Same amount of spaces as the other one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we can see now, here, let me just largen this. We see now the output is 45. So again, this basically iterates through from m to n and sums up basically 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10. So yeah. So here, I'm just gonna not like present it and just keep it this way. So yeah, let's just talk about the input. So basically, it's important to note that if you just specify one argument within the range function, it will begin from 0. So if you want to start from 0, then you don't have to specify, for example, 0 to n plus 1, right? If you just mention n plus 1, then that will already default to 0. And basically, this following, this code should return true, because basically we are saying, okay, so start from 0 and then add up all the way up to 5. So you can basically see that's what this expression does as well. And this should basically also print true. And let's just test that and see if we are right. Okay, this should work. Okay, there we go. So we can see that it is indeed true. And yeah. So I want everyone to pull up the Replit and basically try this problem. So I want you to sum up all the odd numbers from m to n. And yeah, I'll give everyone around, I guess, 3 minutes to try this out. And I'll go over the answer afterwards. So yeah. Okay, that should be enough time, and I'll just go over the answer right now. So basically, we want to use a function called sum to n, and basically define the code block and basically run that. So let's just do that. I'm just going to copy this so that I don't have to write it all myself. And sum to n, basically we want to take two parameters from m to n. So m and n. And let's just do total for x in range. Okay, for x, from x to range m to n plus 1. Let us also check if x divided to, modulus 2 is equal to 1. And again, this is from day 1, but basically, this will divide x by 2 and return the output. And if the number is even, then this should return, the remainder should be 0. But if it's 1, that means that the number is indeed odd. And that is what we want to add to total. So x. And after that, let's return x, total. And that should be it. But let's just test it out. Sum to n. Let's just say 1 to 10. And let's just run that. And we can see that it's 25. And that sounds about right. Let's just see. Let's also print out x so that we can see if all the numbers are odd. And yeah, we can see that it is all odd. And that sums up to 25. Okay, sweet. So yeah, that is basically what I just did. Look over that if you want. But I'll move on right now. Okay, so there is basically another argument you can add to the range function. So over here, where I selected, you can see now that there are 3 arguments instead of 2 or 1. And this k argument basically defines our step. And this is kind of like the k constant in an arithmetic series, if you have taken mathematics. But essentially, I'll show you what this does soon. But yeah, basically both of these code does the same thing. And yeah. So yeah, like I mentioned, this third argument defines our step. And basically it tells us to increment each iteration by whatever k is. So back to this example, we can see that we want to find the total from 5 to 20, right? And that's what this code block wants to do as well. But we can also see that k is defined in this code block, and we've set our k to 1, which means that for every iteration, I want you to add 1 to it. But that's basically what this code block does as well, since we're going from 5, 6, 7, 8, blah, 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 and that is essentially an increment of 1. So yeah. Let's just go back to my example and I'll just show you the usage of it. So for example, if I wanted to state, here I'll just add to this. Let's just say I wanted to, let me just write something and I'll explain it soon. Okay, this should work. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So basically, again, like I mentioned, the third argument defines our step, meaning that we are first going to iterate from all the numbers from 0 to 10, but at the same time, we're going to add 2 instead of our default value of 1. And you can see here that we do indeed start at 0, but every iteration, we're just going to add 2 instead of 1. So we can see that it's going to give us every every even value, essentially, not including 10. So yeah. So one of the cool things you can do with for loops is nesting them. And this is going to be really handy, especially when we're going to be dealing with 2D lists later on this class. But essentially, let's just look at this example. So Adam Smith wants 5 bananas for every 1 apple. He has 5 apples, which is a limiting factor. So certainly, we could print out 25 lines of code, but this is going to be really tedious. So we could also use a for loop within a for loop, otherwise known as a nested for loop, to basically accomplish this task. And here's sort of an example that I can demonstrate. So I'm just gonna copy this code as well, and give me a second again. Okay, let's see. Okay. So yeah, basically, we can see here that this is basically nested. So for example, we have the rows that we're going to iterate through given our argument, as well as the columns. And this is basically going to print out an n by n rectangle of asterisks. So let's just run it and see what this returns. So we can see here that we do get a total of 25 asterisks. And this is way better than having to write out 25 lines of code. And that's basically the power that loops provide us. So let me just quickly delve deep into what this essentially does. So basically, we're going to state that, okay, so I want to have 5 rows, which is what n is. And in this line, we're going to say, I want to have 5 columns of asterisks. And we're just going to print this for every iteration of this. And then after 5 iterations within this, we're going to go back here and then iterate this again. And then so let me just explain this. So for example, let's just say we inputted 5. So that means that this code will begin when the value is 0. Okay? So this is 0 in the first iteration. Now we're going to go into this inner code block, and then we're going to say that this is also 0 in the first iteration. So this is going to print out the asterisk once. Okay? So this is going to print out the asterisk once. Next, it's going to go to the next iteration until 5. So this is going to print out another one, another one, another one, another one, until, yeah, we have reached our final inner loop value, essentially. After that, we're going to go back to this outer loop, and we're going to go to the next iteration. And this is going to start at 0 again. And basically, this repeats until we have reached these last values, 4, 4. And that is basically what this code block does. So yeah, everyone pull up your replets, and I want you to try to print the days from day 1 through 7 for 3 weeks. So for example, this is the output. Basically, if I want to know how many days are in a week, and if I input 1, we can see here that it's going to iterate through a total of 7 times, since there are 7 days in a week, and it's going to basically format like this. So I want you to basically take in this input of how many weeks you want to input and an output of these days. So basically, yeah, I want you to try that, and I'll go over the answer in a second. Okay, let's take a 1 more minute and I'll go over the answer. Okay, I'll go over the answer right now. So basically, we want to take in an input, and let's just say we want to have an input of 3. So this would go into this n argument, and basically we're gonna have an outer loop that's gonna iterate from 1 to whatever number this is. So 1, 2, 3, and we're just gonna say, okay, print what the week is, and as well as we're gonna iterate through the 7, and then basically we're just gonna print out the days within each week. So for example, the output of this code should resemble something like this. However, there should be a total of, this should be basically multiplied by 3, and then it's just gonna have different weeks of week 1, week 2, and week 3, and that is basically what the output should look like. And yeah, so all of that was basically the first type of a loop. The for loops are used to iterate through and repeat code if you have a certain number of times you want to repeat it in mind. But the while loop is used when there is an indeterminate or undecided number of iterations. So for example, if you don't know how much time you want to repeat a certain code, then you can basically use the while loop. And let's just take a look on how it looks. So for example, we're gonna make a function that takes the leftmost digit. So for example, in this scenario, we're gonna try to get 7 over here. And then we're just gonna say, let's just take n, and we're just gonna get the absolute value of n, and this is just for safeguarding it. And then we're just gonna say that while n is greater than or equal to 10, we're gonna keep dividing n by 10 until n is less than 10. Again, let me repeat that. This code block will basically keep running. This code will continue running as long as this condition is met, meaning that as long as n is greater than or equal to 10. And let's just take a look on how this actually works. So basically, it will divide this number by 10, and it will continue to cut every single digit. Here, let me just copy this. Basically, it will continue to cut every digit one by one until we reach the condition where n is less than 10, which is until this point. So we can see that this will return 7, and it is indeed equal to 7. And that is basically how this for while loops basically works. So let's just run this as well to see if it actually works. And let's see. Okay, yeah, let's run it and see. Wait, sure. Print. Oh yeah. Okay. So let's just print this, and this should return 7. Indeed, it does. So that is basically how this code block works. Okay. So basically, there is 3 keywords that you should keep in mind when you're dealing with loops, and that is called the continue, the break, and the pass keywords. So let's just go over what each keyword basically does. And this should be indented. I don't know why. Okay, there we go. Let me just, okay, there we go. So basically, the continue keyword skips the rest of this pass. loop iteration essentially. So basically, if whatever, so basically we're gonna iterate through n from 0 to 200, and in the case where n is divisible by 3, we're gonna continue it, meaning that we're just gonna go to the next number. Now, the break keyword basically says to that if n is equal to 8, we're going to break out of this entire for loop. So when we reach the number 8, this will break out of this entire for loop. And then we're going to have the pass, which essentially is a placeholder and doesn't really do anything. But this is essentially, yeah, what the code does. And let me just show you what it actually does. Here, I'll keep it like this size. And yeah, let's run it. Yeah, so you can see here that this will iterate through from 1 to 200. However, the thing is that if n is equal to 8, then we will break out of this for loop entirely. So technically, we're going to be iterating from 0 to 8, not including 8. So the another thing is that if n is divisible by 3, we're not gonna be printing anything, right? Because it has to reach this line of code in order to print the value. However, this says to go on to the next iteration without doing anything. So this is why 3 is missing from the output, since it just continued on to the next iteration instead of actually reaching this line 42 code. And then we can see that 8 is not included because this breaks out of the for loop entirely, not reaching this line of code here. And yeah, that's basically how this code block works. So there is a special case that you should probably be aware of, which is called the infinite loops. Now, an infinite loop occurs when a for or while loop does not have an exit case that will allow the loop to be ended. And infinite loops can be created purposely, such as when receiving input from the user, but unintentionally creating them is usually the result of a programming error and should be avoided. So let me just show you what happens if you have an infinite loop that was unintended. So let's just say while true, print let's just print A. And let me just get rid of here. Let me just give me a second. Okay, and let's just see what happens. Hopefully, my browser doesn't crash, but let's just see. Okay. Okay, so I assume there's some sort of filter that prevents us from doing something like this. But if there was no filter, this should print A repeatedly over and over again. And the only way we can basically stop it is if the program crashed itself or we actually manually have to exit the system. But yeah, I'm sorry I can't show that to you, but basically that's how it works. So now let's move on to our progress check. So write a program that keeps asking for a number until the user enters a negative number, but at the end, print the sum of all the entered numbers, excluding the negative number. And I'll give everyone around 10 to 15 minutes, and feel free to text in your team class channels if you have any questions, and a TA will assist you. So yeah, I'll give everyone 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll come back and go over the answer. Okay, time's up. Let's go over the solution. So basically, this is a solution. We can see here that we have a sum variable, and we want to repeat this code block until the received input is less than 0, meaning that it is negative. And yeah, so basically, we want to say that, okay, keep inputting a number, and then we want to see if that number is less than 0, because if it is, then that means that we should break out of this loop. But otherwise, if it is greater than 0, then we want to add that to the sum variable and basically return the sum at the end. And yeah, that's basically the solution. And so let's go over another problem. So the combined practice problem, basically this will take in everything that you've learned so far and put it into a single test. So write a function that returns the number of times that the string hi appears anywhere in the given string. So for example, if I want to count the number of highs, we can see here that in the inputted string that it appears once, right over here. We can also see that in the next example, it appears twice, and in the next example, it also appears twice. And basically, let's just take, let's say 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes to try this out. And yeah, I'll give you guys a hint. So basically, you should probably use this line of code somewhere in your program. It'll probably be handy. And you should this loop to look at each index in the string except the last. For each I, extract the string starting at I and up to, but not including I plus 2. Check if that string is high and count how many times that happens. So yeah, I'll give everyone around 5 to 7 minutes to complete this, and I'll go over the solution at the end.
Everyone, I can go over the solution, or at least in solving this problem. Let me show my screen. Alright, can everyone see my replet? Alright, I'm going to continue on. It won't let me see it, but okay, so basically how I would approach this problem is you're basically looking through a string and seeing how many highs you can go through, right? So we can start by making a function, make like a high counter, and then take in a string. What I'm going to do is I want to iterate through each letter of the string. So what that means is if I have a string like ABC, there's a high here, right? I want to go through each of these letters. So we didn't explicitly go over this in class, but
David,
what
I
you
don't
can
think
do,
we can see a screen share.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, let me read.
Yeah, it's loading for everyone.
Is it working now?
Yep, I can see it. I don't know about the other guys though.
It looks like my internet's kind of laggy.
Yeah, it seems to be working now.
Can you guys see me? Alright. Alright. So basically what I did so far is first made a function called height counter, and then want to take in a string. How I'm going to approach this is if we have a string like this, I want to go through each of these letters, and then so I'll go from A to H, but not the last one, right? And I'm going to take this one and then get the one next to it and see if that makes high. And then I'm going to go to the next one, and the next two, and the next two, so on. So first, we're going to set up a counter because we want to count how much something happens. Let's set it to 0. And since we want to loop through the string, we're going to use something called string indexing. This is similar to list indexing, and it's basically the same principle. I'm going to use a for loop. So for, we could use like x in range, let's see, length of the string. And then from there, I'm going to, instead of going through the whole thing, I'm going to say -1 because I don't want to hit that last element, right? And you'll kind of see why I'm doing that a little later on. And basically, so when we're here, before writing any of our if statements or whatever, we want to see what strings we want to look at. So back in our example here, if I have a string like this, I want to get the current string, the character of the string. So I can get that by saying string x. What this is going to do is x is going to be a number, right? From 0 to the length of the string all the way up -1. When I say this, it's going to basically let me get the, if this x is 0, it'll let me get the first element character of the string. If this is 1, the second element, so on. Basically the same thing as list indexing, if you guys remember. And I want to add this with string x plus 1. So what this is going to be is the first one is going to be like this one, and then if I add one, it'll be the one next to it, and it's going to add them together. Basically what we want to do is we want to see if this equals the string high, right? Any confusions up to this point? You remember when we have a conditional, we use the if statement, so I'm going to write if. This conditional, make sure you don't forget your colon. I'm going to delete this. This is just for an example. Make sure you indent inside of your if statements. And then in this case, it's basically saying that, yes, so this part of the string says hi. I'm going to write count plus equals 1. If you guys kind of forgot what plus equals is, it's basically the same thing as saying count equals count plus 1. Same thing. The other one is just a bit simpler. From there, if there's not going to be any like else statement since we're only checking for this one case, so we can just return count. And then from there we can just do our standard input. So we could say user string equals input, and then we have to call our function. So let's print high counter user string. So I'm going to get the input from the user, whatever string it is, pass it through a high counter, it'll give me a number, and I'm going to print that number. Type high once. If I write a bunch of random, oops, I press enter accident, numbers in high, I find that there's ones. Let's say if I have two, oh, actually I misspelled it, my bad. If I have two highs, counts as there's two. This one was probably a kind of a confusing one, a little difficult one, but make sure you guys are familiar with this kind of problems, at least in using using for loops in this kind of way, because it'll be really important for your future homework problems and also in your future coding, in whatever that might be. You guys have any questions? I'll keep an eye on the main class chat in case you guys have any questions. If not, Haiyan, do you want to go over the homework problems?
Sure, yeah. So I'll post today's homework problem in the homework channel, and it should be up right now. And let me know if it's not up. But yeah. So basically, here, let me share my screen as well. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay, it looks like it. Okay, so we have two homework for today. The first one is I want you to write a program that constantly asks for a name until the user enters end. Print the name each time. When the user does enter end, print done. And that is going to be your first assignment. For the second one, I want you to write a program that takes in an integer n and outputs a right triangle with asterisks with height n and base n. And here's a sample input. For example, actually, yeah. For example, let's say the program inputs 3. Then I want you to output basically this right triangle with a base of 3 asterisks and a height of 3 asterisks. And yeah, that's essentially the homework for today. I'll stick around for 10 minutes if you guys have any questions, but if not, then feel free to leave. And yeah, thank you for attending today's class. Bless you.